With the high school season starting on Monday and all the high schools in the Foothill League getting ready, I think it's about time I did my predictions on this year and how Foothill is going to go. In no way am I going to try to guess or predict who's going to get first, second, or even seventh. I think that each school this year is very interesting, and there's a lot of things that can happen, and I think that Foothill this year is going to look a little different than years past. We'll start off with Castaic. Last year they finished 1-11-2 with 1-8-2 being in Foothill. I really liked this team last year. They tied against Golden Valley, they tied them against Canyon, and they actually beat West Ranch. The only problem here is they just got a new coach, and I like the last coach. The last coach really seemed to have the program dialed in. They looked very well organized. They could start using the pieces that they have to start generating wins and moving up the table. But now with a new coach, you kind of question, what does it look like? You know, is there going to be different lingo? Is this guy been around? I don't know too much about the coach, but I think it's just a brand new head coach. So we'll see if Castaic can get organized in the very short time that they have together with this new coach. I do remember last year seeing a lot of hype around Castaic. They were working, you could see them work in the off season, and they were posting a bunch of stuff leading up to season. This year, I have no idea what's going on up there. I can only hope that they're as prepared as they were last year, if not even more. Couple good players on their watch list. I'm really looking forward to seeing what Castaic can do this year. Moving on to West Ranch, last year they finished 3-8-3 with a 2-6-3 record in Foothill. This is going to be probably the biggest hit team who's losing their talent last year. One of the best players who really carried the team and was the team. And then you're also missing another guy up top who's scoring all their goals. Last year they scored 19 goals while having 31 against. So I know a lot of those goals were from one player, and a lot of the chances were actually from a different player. So I'm really curious to see how all of this folds out, if they have the pieces to contend, and what the next chapter looks like for West Ranch and missing one of their key players over the last 3 or 4 years. It's going to be very interesting to see how they do. Moving on to Canyon, and probably going to be the biggest surprise to the league. Last year, they finished 5-9-1 with a 4-7-1 record in Foothill. I think that Canyon finally has the pieces to pull it all together. They're very experienced. They probably have the best attacking line in all of Foothill. They're going to cause terror on all the defenses. Midfield players, extremely good, very talented, can distribute the balls really well, can uphold defensive structure even better. And then you have a defensive line led by 2 center backs who have come in the league young, come into varsity young, and now they're getting into their junior years. And it's going to be harder to get through them than years past. I think they're way more experienced. I think they're faster. I think they're stronger. Overall, this team is going to surprise people, as they usually do. All their starters are extremely talented. They have very, very talented players. Is it going to be another situation where there's too many Chiefs and not enough Indians? And what I mean by that is they just do not have that one guy or those 2 guys that are going to be the leaders of this team and really pull them in the direction that this team needs to go. There's still a lot of aspects that's missing from Canyon's mentality. You ask any Canyon player, how many games are you going to win this year? And they say, we're going to win all of them, and we're just going to run over everybody. When you have that mentality of we're never going to lose a game, we're going to win every single game, and then you finally do lose a game, it becomes interesting to see how the players react. And if there's no leader making sure that they're focused back on the track, understanding that losing is part of the game, there's no way that they'll be able to progress through the season, and then the wheels will come off like they usually do. They started off last year extremely strong. scored 10 goals in their first 2 games, and then they just went on a losing streak of non-Foothill teams, but when they came back to Foothill, it almost seemed like they just could not gain enough steam for whatever reason. So if Canyon can band together and they can understand that losing is part of the game, all these games are going to be extremely competitive, very hard. And if they lose, then it's okay. They're just going to focus on the next game. You might see them in the top 3 this year. I think that this team is destined to break out, and this is probably finally the year that they do it. Moving on to Valencia, who's another very interesting one. The majority of their team last year was all seniors, and now that all of them are gone, they're kind of left with it could be a very inexperienced varsity team. They do still have extreme talent, especially with the young sophomores that are in that program, some of the juniors. But again, they just do not have that varsity experience. However, you do probably have the most qualified coach at this school, and he'll always dial something up. And I think they're going to have a motto this year of, it doesn't matter what it looks like as long as we get a win. And I think they're going to come back and they're going to be super strong. Last year, it was very unfortunately, they lost one of their best players in the second game that they played. And that when you're trying to picture a season and how it goes, and then you lose that one player, if you lose another player after that, which they had a couple minor injuries here and there, you're talking about a different look than what you could have given them if those 2 players were on the field. So I think that Valencia is going to be very interesting this year. I think that everything that they learn this year, you're just going to see it next year, and that's going to make them dangerous not only this year, but in years to come. Moving on to Golden Valley, and I know that I'm biased with Golden Valley, but I do speak a lot of truth. Last year, they finished 12-7-5 with a 5-4-3 record in Foothill. A lot of questions for this team. First of all, they scored 61 goals last year with 33 against, and both of those numbers are really, really questionable this year. Their leading goal scorer, who pushed them into playoffs and kept them in games in playoffs, is no longer with the team. He graduated last year. The goals against category, of the 8 or 9 players that were rotated on the defensive line last year, there's only one returner that is coming back from last year's team. So you're talking a brand new defensive team. Can they keep the goals allowed below 33? It's going to come within them. One big piece that they still do have is an all-team goalkeeper who's going to be a senior this year, and he's looking very good. He looks very on point, ready for the season. So that number, the goals allowed 33, is a hard one to look at, because with the experience of the seniors last year and now rotating a bunch of juniors into those roles, it's going to be interesting if they can keep the ball out of the back of the net. I think the attack is going to be good, with the possibility of it being great. The midfield presence of this team when fully healthy is unbelievable. The attacking options are unbelievable. They have depth to replace it all. They have mixing parts that can play. They have guys that can play 80 minutes. Obviously, I'm rooting for Golden Valley, and I'm very excited to see what we can do. I see Saugus as the same boat as Valencia. They had a lot of players that were in seniors last year that are now gone. So their stat line is very close. They were 6-9-3 overall with a 6-4-2 record in Foothill, good enough to get them second place. They did have 26 goals for and 25 goals against. So I think the pieces are there for a strong defensive line and also a good midfield. Who's going to poke the ball in the back of the net for them this year? I don't know. But the coaching staff there has been there so long, and they're so good at what they do. They'll figure out a way. They'll get in there. They'll be physical. They're going to push the boundaries of some of these teams. They always do. They always cause chaos. And then most of the time last year, they were able to come out on top. So new year for Saugus, but it's going to be the same recipe, and they're going to do just fine. So probably the most interesting story going into this year is going to be Hart. No doubt about it, Hart is still going to be the team to beat. I do not question that at all. They get all of the talent. They have a lot of of really good players in their lower levels year after year. It's not just the varsity, it's all three levels, always, always, always competing, always just flourishing with talent. But if you were to ask me in mid-October who I think the biggest challenger for first place, it was going to be Hart. But it now seems like the wheels may be coming off, and here's why. Of the last 3 years, Hart has had the player of the year all 3 years. This player did so much for the team in so many different ways, providing so much experience. So when you remove that player, what does the team look like? How do they function? They still have probably one of the best goalkeepers in Foothill. Very, very talented. They have one of the best center backs in all of Foothill. And their midfield group this year is going to be very good. But who is going to be that consistent pressure up top, and who is going to be the experience for the entire team? It's going to be a big question mark, and when you have one player at the school for that long and now that player is no longer there, how much does the program suffer? Will someone come in and fill that role? We'll have to see how the season plays out before we know what the future of Hart looks like. On top of that, you have a brand new coach coming in and taking ownership of the boys about 3 weeks before the season starts. I don't know the full details, and I don't know this coach personally. I think he's been an assistant in the program, so that helps his situation. But is he a different playing style coach? Is he going to just pick up the reins where he left off? A lot of questions that need answers, and I'm sure he's more than qualified to do the job, but you have to kind of ask yourself, is this the year that Hart loses a couple more games in league? The last team that I know that they've lost to was during the 2020-2021 season when we were playing during COVID, and they lost to Valencia 2-0. Before that, in the 2019-2020 year, they lost to Canyon 1-0. So you're talking about a team that does not lose very many Foothill games. And they are very well experienced in winning games year after year. You have to go all the way back to 2018-2019 year before they won Foothill. So again, a very, very deep school. They're still the team to beat, but have enough pieces fallen off of the puzzle to where this thing comes crumbling in before them. Still going to compete for the top spot. Can a couple teams chip away at them this year, prevent them from winning, maybe making them lose a couple games, and then somebody else take the throne? All in all, it's a very interesting year. First contest kicks off on Monday the 13th. That's when all of their teams begin their campaigns. I wish everybody the best of luck. Honestly, I want to see some great soccer. A lot of developments with the referees this year. I hope all the games are just very smooth. There's no major injuries. And I'm just looking forward to competing in a league I've been a part of now for this is my 6th year. So looking forward to seeing some of the highlights of the years and maybe breaking down at the halfway point before January starts. But overall, I'm very excited, and I wish everybody nothing but the best. Good luck.